Welcome to season two, episode 4 of the Adam Davis Show. I'm so glad you're here. I hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. All of our energy, all of our attention has shifted to Christmas. And I thought about a great idea for a brand new shirt. Instead of it saying it's the most wonderful time of the year, we scratch out wonderful and put stressful because this season is full of stress. And I think that my guest today is going to help you because I know your sleep's been disrupted. I know that you've had a lot of late nights, early mornings, and it's only going to get worse before Christmas Day. And then we'll all shift to New Year, New Me, New Year's resolutions for January of 2026. My guest today is widely known as the FBI's expert on sleep. She has authored a book that is the most comprehensive book on sleep for first responders, and Dave Grossman called it the most important book on this topic of our time. And today's guest is none other than Dr. Leah Kaylor, who is a dear friend, fellow author, and I'm honored to have her today. Dr. Leah, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I also thought whenever you were saying the t-shirt slogan, I thought you were going to say it's the most sleepless time of the year, which I think we could, maybe I'll market those ones and you market the most stressful time of the year ones.
It is. It
It
is the most sleepless,
is.
and I think it's for a number of reasons. I think for a lot of people, the holidays are a heavy time of year for a number of reasons, whether it's death in the family or sickness, or maybe they're caught in a comparison deal where they see everybody else being able to do for their family and they can't, and or just in general, just life sucks more in the during the holidays. I'll tell you this: during when I was in law enforcement, I hated Christmas season because I saw the worst of humanity during that time. And we often stayed a lot busier. It's actually one of the most violent times of year for law enforcement around Christmas. And so I hated it. And it took a solid year for me to get back, or a solid cycle of Christmases to get back to a place where I actually look forward to it again. I used to love it, and I'm kind of back there. But anyway, I want to talk to you because I know for a fact that I have to improve my sleep, and I think it's something that a lot of us brush off until the consequences are taking a toll on our bodies, the health diagnosis, whatever the case may be. And a lot of my audience is first responders, but I have some who aren't first responders. So I don't want to go off too much into the weeds, but let's talk. Why did you write If Sleep Were a Drug, which is this book, which you can't see? If Sleep Were a Drug, what was the heart behind it? Why did you write it?
Great question. We're going to have to go back in time, probably about 7 years ago, where I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center. I was finishing my last year of my PhD, which is where you go out into the real world, you match with some type of facility. So I matched with the Memphis VA. And when you're there, you have to do a bunch of different rotations. You have to be really well rounded. So they're trying to get you different populations, different experiences, just lots of different things. So you are as well rounded as possible after that year. And because that's the time where you go and you get your own license and you work under yourself. And there were a few rotations that I really had my heart set on. And since writing this book and reaching out to my training director, I had asked her, "Hey, I wish I could remember if I wanted to be in the sleep clinic or not." And, like this has happened, the book has happened. I'm the FBI sleep expert now. Do you remember back to that time where we're all trying to figure out our rotations? Because the way that it's described, and it's a great way to describe it, is that all the interns and all the postdocs, we all have to go into a room. There's a certain number of rotations, and we're not coming out of that room until everyone is relatively happy. Like there's going to be some compromises. And my training director was like, "Yeah, I remember." She's like, "It just fit in your schedule." So, it's so weird and so ironic, and like life has a funny way of getting us to do things. And so yeah, I had my heart set on a couple of rotations, and ironically enough, sleep wasn't one of them. But when I got to the sleep clinic, I was just blown away at how many people were struggling with sleep, how many different shapes and sizes and flavors, if you will, that like sleep disruption comes in. And during that time of my life, I'm not sure if it was the Memphis area, if it was just who was attracted to that particular VA, but I had a very big population of Vietnam veterans. And I think that the issue was, I mean, again, there's just so much that comes along with that particular cohort, if you
Yeah.
will. And so I was seeing so much sleep avoidance, which I had never seen anything like that in my life, nightmares, insomnia, CPAP adherence problems, like so many different things. And I would be teaching sleep clinic classes at the VA, and ironically, people were just falling asleep on me. Like, you're here, you came all the way to the VA to come and do a sleep class, and yet you're falling asleep on me. So it just really opened my eyes. And while I was there, again, so grateful. I'd never helped anyone with sleep issues before. Maybe it was like a tangential problem compared to the primary issue that they'd come in to work with me. But when I was there, I just took so much information. So, kind of rewind, the whole time I'm doing my PhD, I'm an FBI intern. And the internship is a pipeline for employment. If you keep your grades up, if you're doing well, if they like you, you like them. At the end, when you graduate, they can offer you a full time position. And so that's what I was hoping for. And I finished my residency and I'm offered a full time psychologist position. And I get there, and my supervisor at that time asked me, like, okay, Leah, so what's going to be your thing? We hired you as a psychologist. And they know that I was trained as a trauma psychologist, but I think whenever it comes to just being a psychologist out in the world, sometimes you say that and sometimes it's very well received and people like almost want to have an impromptu session with you, like on an airplane or, at a
Oh,
Starbucks
yeah.
or something. And then there are other times where you tell people you're a psychologist and then they just kind of like turn the other way slowly without saying anything. And, you never know what kind of reaction you're going to get. But normally, especially like first responders, law enforcement, like that type of population, I get much more of the second reaction of like, slowly walking away now, not going to say anything more to you. And so what I had thought in my mind was like, okay, I'm trained as a trauma psychologist. I know that there's plenty of trauma to go around here. However, how about I do this like sneaky foot in the door thing where I talk about sleep, talk about the importance of sleep, talk about the common issues that people are having, how to fix them. And then maybe people will open up to me and realize I'm not that scary and that, therapy doesn't have to be a terrifying experience. And that's exactly what happened. And to such a degree, right? It went from 0 to 60 because there was no one else talking about sleep. There was no one else giving sleep interventions. And it just really snowballed into something so big where I was getting requests constantly to do webinars or to go to various different field offices to do presentations on sleep or to work one on one with people with either nightmares or like trauma related nightmares or just getting a individualized sleep plan. And it just became bigger and bigger. And I ended up coming across a dear friend who's a friend of yours and a friend of mine, the great Paul Butler. And he had heard me talk about sleep in Hawaii. And he said, More people need to hear this. Like, you can't just be in the FBI. We need to share this resource." And so he helps me get more into state and local and community presentations and lectures. And it just kind of grew from there. And so what I thought was, this information seems like there's a gap. Like there are other books out there on sleep, and some of them seem very pop culture-y, some of them seem very sciency. And so what I thought was, I think that there's a gap here where we just don't talk about why do we sleep? What does it mean when we're not sleeping well? How can we fix that? And so when I went to one of these conferences out in the community, because whenever I'm at the FBI and I'm doing a lecture, oftentimes it's a captive audience, right? Like they don't have a choice. Whoever comes up in front of them, they're going to sit there and they're going to listen to it. But when I went out into the community, that was the ultimate test of people were actually interested in hearing about sleep. And the first conference that I had gone to where I was the breakout and you had a choice of coming to my lecture or not, I was blown away. They gave me the biggest room. It was completely full. We had no more seats. It was standing room only. The audience was so engaged. Like the time flew by. And as I was packing up my stuff and leaving when the session was over, someone approached me and said, "Hey, this was wonderful. But the problem is it's my best friend. She's the one who really needs this help and she couldn't be here today. Do you have a website? Do you have a handout? Do you have a book?" And
Mm.
so that's what really planted the seed and made me think, yeah, there's this really is a gap in the literature and a gap in just our knowledge and why sleep is so important. And as I think back to, again, that old supervisor at the bureau, she would talk to people all the time about wellness and say, oh, the three pillars of wellness, sleep, exercise, and nutrition. And as I think back to it now, I'm like, no, the foundation of everything is sleep. And then you can build whatever pillars you want on top of it. But that really is the way
Yeah.
that I think about it. And so I don't know if your listeners know this or not, but you and I came together and made this book a possibility because I wrote it, but I wasn't sure what to do with it next. And so you're the one who helped me bring this to fruition and out into the world.
Thanks to an introduction from our dear mutual friend, Paul. And
Yes.
one of the things I think about when I think about sleep is, well, my own experiences, but I'm not the only one. Maybe it's not a first responder. Maybe it does apply to them, but you get home after, a 12-hour shift or whatever, and, you have dinner, you spend some time with family, friends, whatever, and then you go to sit down. Well, your mind is running a million miles an hour. And I think this is pretty common. It's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
common for a lot of people. And we also know, based on some recent research, that melatonin can have some long-term negative consequences on our health using it long term. So let's pretend melatonin doesn't exist in supplement form. What are some ways that we can quiet our minds before bedtime so that that is not an issue of racing minds? You go lay down, and for the first time all day, it's quiet and all the ideas come.
So, can I talk a little bit about melatonin just
Oh,
for a
yeah,
second
please,
and then
please.
answer your question? So, I think that this is really important because melatonin is very misunderstood. Melatonin does not cause sleep, it does not initiate sleep. You can think of melatonin because your body naturally makes it every night. You can think about melatonin as like the messenger letting the brain know, hey, this is the time that we go to sleep, but it's not causing sleepiness. And so, we see melatonin on the shelf, and now it seems like there are more and more bottles and more different variations and additives and milligram choices and everything else. However, melatonin is not a sleep aid. It is not meant to be taken as such. And there's research out there to show people who do take it that way, it only helps you fall asleep approximately 4 minutes faster, and it only improves your sleep quality approximately 2%. So, people who are ingesting this and thinking that this is a sleep aid, it is not.
Placebo effect, maybe?
And the placebo effect is probably one of the most powerful things that we have in pharmacology.
Um,
But not only that, and I'm not going to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but we need to think about melatonin and that our body makes it naturally, but it makes low doses. What we are seeing in our big box stores and on those labels is oftentimes way higher than what our body would normally make. And so if you're someone who's taking those and then you're wondering why you're feeling like a zombie the next day and you're having a
Oh,
hard
yeah.
time coming back out of it and you feel like you really need that caffeine, that could be an issue because the doses that we're seeing being sold in stores is just far higher than our body would naturally make. So there are some people who melatonin would be appropriate for, such as shift workers. Another population would be those who are traveling across time zones. But otherwise, melatonin is not something that's meant to be taken every night. And it's certainly not meant to be given to children either. And I think that that's important because a lot of your listeners are probably parents too. So I just want to put
Yes.
that out there. It's important for us to know that melatonin is not a sleep aid. It does not cause sleep. And so we shouldn't be taking it that way, especially because there's a lot of studies out there to show that what's on the label and what's actually in the gummy or the capsule or whatever form you're taking it in often is much, much lower or much, much, much higher than what's on the label. And so I think we just need to be really informed consumers, and that conversation just isn't happening. And so I want to put that out there.
Yeah, no, that's really good, and it's important. I've known of parents who are giving their children melatonin because they can't sleep well. They're like holding a phone or tablet or video game until bedtime. So,
Right.
but yeah, that's a great conversation. That melatonin is. I didn't have any good experiences with it. Didn't really benefit me, with the exception of being groggy when I got up, and I didn't like that. But when it comes to quieting our mind, now I'm not a clinician. I know that's a shocker, but there are different supplements that we can use. But what are some things that we can do outside of supplements to help us quiet our minds, slow our minds down before bed?
I love your question because, again, I'm a psychologist and I'm also a prescriber. But at the end of the day, I always, always, always would rather see people do lifestyle changes, environmental changes. And it's not until much later that we consider some type of supplement. So I'm glad that you asked that question. I think a big piece of it is just society and the way that there are so many demands on our time, on our attention, on our energy. I think that everybody can relate to this. I know for a fact that I say this several times a day is that there just aren't enough hours in the day. And I would be willing to bet that your audience feels that as well. But we live in such a culture that's very like hustle and grind and how much can you achieve, and there's this like badge of honor for being sleepless and continuing to push through and well, you slept 3 hours, well, I slept 2, how do you like me now? Like, we very much have this culture that needs to stop. But I think a big piece of it is we are so go 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 all day long that when it finally comes time for bed, a lot of us are just falling face first into bed trying to fall asleep, and some people do. And when that happens, it's probably more so a sign of sleep deprivation than anything else because your body is begging for sleep that you are falling asleep immediately. That's a sign of sleep deprivation. It should take you like 10-ish minutes to fall asleep. You shouldn't put your head on the pillow and immediately be conked out. That is a sign of sleep deprivation. But I think the scenario that you painted for us earlier of being so tired, being so exhausted, then you lay your head down on the pillow and your brain is immediately awake and like thinking about all the things. And the way that I conceptualize this is that we need to like life happens way up here. So for those of you who are just listening, my hand is way above my head. But sleep happens way down here. So my hand is far lower. And what we need to do is we need to figure out a way to go from life happening way up here to sleep happening way down here. These are two very different physiological states. And I like to think about it as landing a plane. Like, we do not want to crash land this plane. We do not want any of the equipment to malfunction. Like, we want to keep the wings, we want to keep the wheels, we do not want to crash. We have to figure out a nice way to land this plane. And the way that I think about it is, maybe you've got kids. If you don't, you were a child at one point, and you probably had some type of elaborate bedtime routine. I think a
Mhm.
lot of parents do this for their kids where there's like bath time and then picking out special pajamas and you pick a book and maybe we sing a song and we pick a special stuffed animal and we get all tucked in and we turn on the nightlight and we read the book and then we ask for another book and like hugs and kisses and then we turn off the lights. But there's this whole elaborate routine and ritual that we do night after night. We don't just take a child and throw it into the crib and turn off the lights like that doesn't that's not
I mean,
what
you
should
can,
be
but
happening. It's probably not successful. There are some parents who may be doing that.
yeah,
But I imagine if you're here and you're listening, you are not that type of parent.
yeah.
But nonetheless, that's just not how we think of putting a child to bed. And I don't know at what point in time we decided that as adults, we're too cool for this wind down routine. But that's really what it is that I think we're missing out on is this buffer time
We're crash
between
landing the plane.
we're very much crash landing the plane, and then that is when our brain starts to go off, and we are alert, and we're like this wired but tired state, and the brain is just going off, and it won't stop spiraling. That's kind of like this side effect malfunction of us not landing the plane properly, and I very much think that the brain needs some type of buffer time between the busyness, the craziness, the hecticness of the day to this very hopefully peaceful, relaxed time that is sleep. And I know, again, everyone's probably saying, well, I don't have enough hours in the day. And this doesn't mean that you have to sit and meditate for 30 minutes or an hour. It doesn't have to look like that. Everybody's routine can look like something different. But one of the things that is free, easy, beneficial is dimming the lights in your environment. That's one of the ways that we signal to our brain and our body based on our caveman ancestors and that neural circuitry that they had that they knew it was time to be awake when the sun came up and they knew it was time to go to bed when the sun went down is that we can kind of trick our brains into starting to wind down by dimming the lights in our environment. Because if you think about it, a lot of us tend to have our lights on kind of like we're in an interrogation room. Like it is so bright, we've got
Yes.
every light on. And that is whether we realize it or not. And light is a stimulant, and sunlight is our most powerful, but overhead lights, lights from screens, lights from tablets, that all still acts as a stimulant. And, we talk about blue light being bad, but we don't really talk about the science behind it and why. And there's kind of twofold here. One of the reasons why we talk about blue light being bad or harmful is that blue light is the same wavelength as sunlight.
Mhm.
Well, whenever you're trying to fall asleep, your brain logically knows, okay, it's 10 p.m., it's 11 p.m., this is my bedtime. I'm laying down in my bed. But then if you've got your screen close up to your face, this brightness, that brightness coming into the eyes is being interpreted as sunlight. So, even though the brain is so incredible and amazing and brilliant, sometimes we can trick it just by something as simple as that, as having exposure to electronics and blue light too close to bed. But it's not just that, it's also how we're interacting with the blue light. So, are you interacting in like a very heated social media debate? Are you watching funny cat reels? Are you playing games? Are you getting really sucked in because this is the season finale of Stranger Things? I don't know. So, it depends on how interacted you are with the screen. And that is another thing that we need to talk about is dopamine. Your brain is releasing dopamine. Dopamine is this feel good neurotransmitter that keeps us doing whatever that activity is. It tells us, yes, I like this. I want more. Show me more funny cat videos. Tell me more about Stranger Things. Like what's going to happen next to 11. So it's that keeps bringing us in, and then that's where we kind of also lose track of time. And when did it become 2 o'clock in the morning again? How did this
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, yeah, and you wake up
Yes.
at 2 or you wake up at 3 and or you're
Yes.
you're you're not awake, you didn't wake up, you're still awake because 'cause you're just
Still
sitting there
awake.
scrolling.
Yes, and you've
Hey,
just been totally sucked in.
let's come back to that in just a second. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. For today's episode, season 2, episode 4, I want to introduce you to a wonderful program. It's recovery technology built for those who serve. Shift out of high alert and reset your body and mind. It's safely and it's natural and it's on demand. New Calm helps you decompress after hard calls, sleep better between shifts, and come back clear and ready. Right now, you can click the link in the show notes for a free 7-day trial. New Calm is a tool I use, and I don't recommend or sponsor anything that I don't personally use, and it will help you sleep better starting tonight. When we talk about our sleep environment and we talk about the blue lights and we talk about
Mhm.
having a interrogation room for a bedroom because it's so bright,
It's like
one of
stadium lighting.
stadium lighting. One of the things I did was I got one of these smart light bulbs, just like the Amazon
Mhm.
brand, and I could use the app on my phone to dim the lights
Yep.
as we get closer to bedtime. You can also change the light colors, which I don't do. I just dim the lights, and so you can make it really dim, and
Mhm.
which makes it a lot easier on the eyes when you're walking in there to go to bed. I know screen time, whether it's TV or a laptop or smartphone, whatever, that really screws with our eyes and our sleep rhythm, whatever circadian rhythm or something. Could you speak to that? I know that there's shift workers on here. I know that there's people who are just they're small business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they hustle all the time and
Mhm.
they probably get 3 to 5 hours of sleep every night, and that's a badge of honor. I mean, it's really in whether you're an entrepreneur or a first responder, that 3 to 5 hours is a badge of honor until it comes time to pay the man. So
Mhm.
I know that's a lot, but can you come back to that and lead us to a solution?
I will do my best. So, I think that everybody listening here has pulled an all-nighter, whether it was in school, whether it was in your occupation. And I'm sure that you've pulled many than just one. However, a lot of times we trick ourselves into thinking that it's productive, right? Like, I'm going to stay up all night. I am going to study. I'm going to get all this information into my brain. And then, tomorrow morning, when it's time for that final exam, I'm just going to crush it. And the research actually tells us that that's not true at all, that it's very much this like false sense of productivity, in that if we had just gone to bed, we would perform better than had we tried to stay up all night, try to memorize all these facts. And I think that that was one of the most interesting things that I came across when I was putting together the research for this book, was that whenever we are sleep deprived, we do not know how impaired we are. And that's a big problem, because researchers can take people into a lab and have them do various different cognitive tests and coordination tests and whatnot. But in the real world, we don't have things like that. So you think that you're performing just fine when in reality, that's not the case at all. And so, yes, it very much is this badge of honor. And that's what I talk about in the book is it is until it's not. And we just don't talk about sleep enough. I think we kind of take it for granted that like it happens every night. For the most part, it either happens or it doesn't, but every night you have this opportunity. But we don't talk about the very severe consequences for emotional health, for cognitive health,
Oh, yeah.
for health span, for physical health, for every organ in your body, how I don't even have a great word, detrimental it is
Yep.
for that. But we don't need to go down that road necessarily because it sounds like you are looking for techniques to help folks. So I would say one of the things that we need to do is to have some type of wind down routine. So we started to talk about that a little bit. And I know that asking people not to have any type of blue light in their wind down routine is unrealistic. Like I totally get
Oh,
that.
yeah.
But maybe what you could do instead is find other things that are interesting, that are entertaining, maybe like listening to a podcast, listening to an audiobook, doing some stretching, doing some deep breathing. I know that you're a big fan of tapping.
Oh,
Maybe
yes.
you are doing some journaling or some gratitude practice. Like, I know that a lot of people like to disengage or kind of blow off steam with, turning the television on or something along those lines. But that's much more passive and kind of like disconnected and almost like a zoned out, like zombie type of state that the person's getting in. Whereas I'd rather see you can still do things that you have to do for the next day, right? Like getting your clothes together, getting your gym clothes together, like packing the kids' lunches. You can do all those types of things, but do it in a dim environment. Like put on some soothing music, move slowly, like be mindful about your movements. Like these are things that you can do to have a wind down routine. Now, one exercise that I want to give to people for those specifically who have a hard time with their brain just turning on when they lay their head down to go to sleep is an exercise that I love. It's called worry time. And this exercise is best done a few hours before bed. So I think a lot of people think that good sleep happens either like right before bed or like during the night. But you would be surprised to know that all day long, from the minute that you wake up all day long, all the things that you do are very dynamic and very intertwined with your ability to fall asleep. So, this technique I'm going to give you, I want you to do a couple of hours before sleep, but it will help you kind of shut off your brain. And one thing I will say is good sleep does not happen overnight. I say this all the time because you may be listening to this episode right now. You're so excited. You go home, you give it a try, and you still have a crap night's sleep. It doesn't mean this technique doesn't work. It just means that it's going to take time.
Yep.
Think about how often this has been happening to you. Maybe days, weeks, months, years, decades. I've worked with people who have been sleeping poorly for decades.
Oh,
So just know that it's going to take time to rewire the brain, to get rid of old habits and to build new habits. So I tell you that to say is stay consistent. So let me tell you about this technique. It's a favorite of mine. It's called worry time. Worry time is best done somewhere that is not your bedroom. So go to your kitchen, your living room, your den, and go out on your patio and do this, I would say, like around dinner time. So I would say, like, a good 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, somewhere that is not your bedroom, because it's worry time. We are specifically going to spend time worrying. We don't want to intentionally bring those worries into the bedroom. We don't want to do that. So we're going to have two pieces of paper. I know, very old school. And we're going to set a timer, no more than 10 minutes. 5 minutes would be fine. 7 minutes would be fine. We're going to set a timer and we're just going to word vomit everything that comes up. And on one piece of paper, we're going to write all the things that we can do or we can control. And then on the other piece of paper, we're going to write down all the things that we cannot control. So we're going to set the timer. It's going to start going, and we're just going to dump our brain onto these pages. So, for example, the things that we can control are I have to call the post office. I need to make a veterinarian appointment. I need to go get the car detailed. Things that you can do. Like they're kind of swirling around in your brain. They're bothering you. You can't get them done right now, but you know they need to be done. The way that I like to think about this is kind of giving these thoughts that are swirling around like a parking space. That's what I like to think about it as. Another way to conceptualize it is everyone has a grocery list, and we will often think of things that need to go on our grocery list in the most inopportune times. So I might think about peanut butter when I'm in the shower. Clearly, I do not have my list with me, or when I'm giving a podcast right now, or, when I'm giving a lecture to my class, whatever the case may be. So by the time I finally get to my grocery list and I write down peanut butter, normally it leaves me alone. I like my brain knows it is on the grocery list. When we go to the store, we will take the grocery list with us and we will not forget it. So that's the way that I like to think about this paper for all the things that we can control. Now, on the other side, we have this other paper of all the things we cannot control. There's a lot of things in life that we cannot control. You can think about the weather as hard as you want to, but you will not change the weather on your best friend's wedding day. Like, you can
Yeah.
think as hard as you want to. And it's kind of examples like that of it doesn't matter how hard you think, you cannot change things. And so that's what we're putting on this other page is the things that we cannot change. No matter how hard we think about it, we can't control it. And the reason why I say paper and pencil is because there's something very therapeutic about handwriting. I know people like to type, I know people like to text, but different parts of the brain light up when we do handwritten things. So that's why I prefer handwriting. So after our timer goes off, however much time we've set, we are done. We are finished. So we're going to take that paper with all the things that we can control and we're going to kind of think about it as a to-do list. So maybe we'll put it in our work bag for tomorrow. If you work from home, maybe you're putting it on your desk, just somewhere where you'll see it and your brain will know, okay, yep, these are things that I can do, just not right now. But I got it. I got it taken care of. And they have their parking space. For the other paper of all the things that we can't control, what we're doing now is we're symbolically telling the brain, we're done with this. There's nothing more for us to do. So we rip it, we shred it, we tear it up, we burn it, we put it down the garbage disposal, like whatever, to get rid of these thoughts, to let the brain know, I can't do anything more about this. I cannot control this. And like I said, this is meant to be a short and sweet exercise. It doesn't have to take long, but it does take consistency in order to begin to see a difference by the time you lay down and have that quietness of the night that your brain doesn't automatically try to go back to those things.
How long did you say set the timer for?
I would say no more than 10 minutes. Like,
Okay.
if you're a beginner, if you feel like you're not really sure, do 3 minutes, do 5 minutes, do 7 minutes, but I wouldn't do more than 10. It's meant to be just a short exercise and just let your brain word vomit all the things. And especially if during the daytime too, like you start worrying about things, once you start to get into a practice like this of worry time, you will start to learn how to put those things to the side and think, I heard you. I
Mhm.
have a scheduled time for you, and it's called worry time. I'll see you there.
Yeah. I want you to take just a few minutes, if you will,
Mm.
and speak to the person listening or watching this episode that they know how important sleep is, but it's just not a priority right now. Maybe they've already started having some consequences from lack of sleep, but they are redlining through life. Could you speak to that person that doesn't see the importance of prioritizing not just sleep, but quality sleep?
So, one of my very favorite things that I learned when I was at the sleep clinic, because your brain does so many incredible things at night. People think that we turn off the lights and then our brain turns off and our body turns off, and it couldn't be further from the truth. So, I'm just going to share two very small things with you just to let you know how active your brain and body are at night. So, the first one is I like to call it the brain car wash. And this is during deep sleep, which we cycle through deep sleep, light sleep, and REM sleep throughout the night. So during deep sleep, this very important function happens. I think it's probably the most important function. And what it is that your brain shrinks up and then you have cerebral spinal fluid coming up from the spine. I used to call it a brain wash. I don't call it that anymore. I call it a brain car wash now. And it comes through and it just kind of power washes your brain, right? Like it gets rid of all the gunk, the junk, the misfolded proteins, the crap that's building up throughout the day. That may not seem very monumental, but it takes all that and it washes it away as waste. But think about it a different way. Think about it as you probably live somewhere where, say, for example, Tuesday, you put your trash out on the curb and the waste management team comes, they pick it up. It's simple, it's routine, you don't think twice about it. The next Tuesday, same thing. You put your trash out, they come and pick it up. It is what it is. But what if they stop showing up? We're going to still continue to make waste and garbage, and it's going to start to pile up because we're constantly just making trash. And eventually that will build up. It will start to smell. We'll have rodents. We'll have health issues. it's going to cause a problem. And that's what also happens in the brain when we don't get this nightly brain car wash is that we just have this junk getting in the way and gumming up the works. And a lot of people, again, may not realize the gravity of this situation. And I'm not above scaring people into getting better sleep because whatever it takes to get you there, then that's what it takes. But the reason why I love this example so much is that those misfolded proteins, that gunk, that molecular debris that's building up has the potential, and I'm not saying cause because I need to be very careful about my language,
Yeah.
but is associated with neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's, such as dementia, such as Parkinson's disease. Now, remember, these are very dynamic conditions where genetics, lifestyle, diet, exercise, all these things come into play. So I'm not saying cause and effect, but I'm saying if you choose to treat sleep as an afterthought and you're not getting it and you're not getting that regular brain car wash, you are effectively using sleep as a risk factor
Mhm.
for neurodegeneration versus, say for example, myself, I'm watching my grandmother go through very severe Alzheimer's and was just placed into a care home. And so I know that this is already written in my genetics. So sleep is something that I very highly prioritize, but as a perfect protective factor against that future neurodegeneration that's already written into my DNA. So I think that that's one important piece that
That's
just
really good.
I think there's so
That's
much
really good.
gravity to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that. I like that a lot, and, you know, there is so much that we could cover
Oh
in
my
this
gosh.
book,
I know
and
chapter.
I'm trying to give I'm trying to pull out, like, some of the highlights and some of the things that'll benefit, my listeners, but also that will make them wanna go and check this book out, and you have this on audiobook too, don't you?
I do, yes, and so I am the voice, so if you like listening, if you like what you're hearing right now, I am the voice that's on Audible, but yeah, I think that, if you value your health, because a lot of people, right, are, like, so looking forward to retirement. I think that everybody, like, most adults are, like, looking forward to a retirement, like, whatever that means for you, like, spending time with grandkids, like, having a boat, whatever, but there's such a thing as health span, and health span is not just how long you live, but how long you're living in good health. So you may live to be very long, but what is your quality of life?
Yeah.
And so I think that sleep is really the key for long health span,
Yeah,
not
that's
just
good.
lifespan.
A few years ago, I was on this like really, really focused and intense journey to lose a lot of body fat. And I
Hmm.
was working out 6, 7 days a week. And I was eating really, really clean. And I'd gotten down to like 11% body fat and working with a trainer and all this. And I just couldn't get past a certain point. And so in came the sleep audit. You can
Mm.
have the great nutrition, you can
Yep.
have the great physical fitness and training, but if you're not sleeping well, you're like he almost said, like, well, he kinda said, "If you slept 3 hours last night, there's really no need to come to the gym today because you don't even have the foundation for this to stand on."
Hmm.
And, it doesn't matter what your goals are. You've heard Dr. Leah tell you today the importance of it, the consequences of not prioritizing it. If you're a first responder, lack of sleep is, and you've heard Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman say this, you are more of a liability to
Yeah.
the people you serve with, the people you serve, your agencies, yourself. And so I want to challenge each of you to find this book, If Sleep Were a Drug by Dr. Leah Kaylor. It's everywhere books are sold. I know it's on Amazon. Where can people find out more about you, connect with you, buy your book you to speak? How can they connect with you?
Yes. So my name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. That's the name of my website, drleahkaylor.com. Find me on LinkedIn, friend me there, send me a message. And yeah, that's the best way to find me and to connect with me.
Well, Dr. Leah, thank you for your time today. And I hope that someone listening to this will start making steps towards having better quality sleep because it matters. It's a big deal. And, if it were a drug, it would be the best drug on the market.
You couldn't afford it.
That's right. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for being here.
Sweet dreams.